Nick, we talk about a lot of things here on the show, and I want to talk about this week. Um, I don't even know how to categorize it, but let's just say that there's an article that's out right now talking about AI. We do. We talk about AI a
Should
lot
we
here on
look
the
at
show.
it? Should we look at this thing?
Let's bring up the article. Let's do
Okay,
it.
here we go. This is the thing that's got us excited.
So
So,
the headline here um, says that the Gartner survey finds that AI automation is reducing some entry level hiring at nearly one quarter of organizations. Nick, I want to get your thoughts on this, but before I do, really quickly, I just
hmm,
want to say
hmm.
something to people who would see this and just keep on going. They would see this headline and roll. I just want to point a few things out. The structure of this statement, to me, is intentional, of course, obviously, because this is a person in the media who's writing. That'll be Mary Baker. Mary Baker wrote this. It says that Gartner survey finds. So immediately, the word Gartner being used, it's a popular name, that is intentional. Finds AI automation is reducing some. As soon as you see the word some, that could mean anything. That could mean three. It could mean 3,000 out of 10,000. It could mean absolutely anything. There's no real number there. Then it says entry level hiring. So it doesn't say entry level jobs. It says entry level hiring, which are two different things. Nick, you took a look at this story. What are your thoughts here? What you got?
Well, I was either, and I forget what it was, but I was listening to something or I was reading something else, and I just saw a reference to this stat,
Mm-hmm.
and it just stuck in the back of my mind. I don't remember where I saw it, but I was like, I need to look that up because it doesn't really make much sense to me. This idea that there are the key one, the key observation was that for 22%, nearly one quarter, so not quite as bad as 15%, Thurman, but 22% of these HR leaders are reporting that at least one business leader in their organisation has stopped hiring for entry level roles due to AI automation. And that was
Right.
the thing that kind of stuck with me. It wasn't the idea of like the scale or the not scale of it, how big or how small this issue is. It was the thought of those individuals, that there are individual people who would describe themselves or have been described as business leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the word leader means something, beyond being just the person who's in charge. Like there's a meaning to the word leader.
Mm-hmm.
Have decided that because of AI, they're going to stop hiring entry level people. And I just kind of I thought about this and I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me, Thurman. Like it doesn't make any sense because when you started your career, you know what were you? How would you define yourself? Were
Well, I
you
was a
perhaps
teenager.
a were you an entry level person?
Um, at the beginning of my career, I would call myself an entry level person. Absolutely.
And is the fact that you are now not an entry level person kind of contingent on the fact that at some point in the past you were an entry level person?
Yes.
And do you think that maybe like let's think like I don't know, Sam Altman, clearly not an entry level person, right? Although
Absolutely.
depending
Right.
on how his startup goes, maybe in the future, we don't know. But right now, at least, not an entry level person. But
Right.
at some point, presumably, Sam Altman was an entry level person, right? And someone
Absolutely.
like Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. I think he has a storied history working at Microsoft. And at some point back in the past, he was an entry level person. Like, in fact, that everyone who has any role that isn't an entry level role is in that role because of the fact that at some point in the past they were an entry level person, right? And every
Mm-hmm.
person who is being described by their HR leaders as business leaders in their organization were at one time entry level people in order to become a business leader in their organization. And now those people are like, AI. And
Yeah.
I'm an AI positive person. You know, I'm an AI positive person. You know, I believe in the benefits that this is going to bring us.
Hmm.
I do believe in the fact that it can be a positive influence in our society. But I can tell you one thing for sure: it is not going to be a positive influence in our society with those alleged business leaders leading their businesses in the way they are, according to Gartner. Like, that is a 100% certainty. And that is
I
something
will
that we
say
need to deal with.
yes. Well, the first thing I would say is that, well, right now, I would say we don't necessarily have much to worry about because, again, the way this is even described, they had to go fishing really hard and finagle these words to really make it a thing. But you have a legit concern because it's enough for them to at least get some kind of meat to even write this story. So there are organizations out there that have taken on the thought process that, hey, forget the entry level stuff. Let's let AI do it. So, Nick, I'm assuming your concern here is, let's say you are this leader and you have decided to stop hiring entry level folks. And now that you've stopped hiring entry level folks, you have also implemented AI inside of your department somehow to take away those entry level jobs, to do those entry level jobs. So now you don't need entry level people. If today is 2026 and you have the youngest person in your office is maybe 30, and we go 10 years from now, and that youngest person is now 40, and you have gone this whole time without hiring any entry level folks, which are typically younger folks, that's the problem. It's almost they have intentionally created their own gap. And well, you know what? That's not even weird. Organizations do that all the time, except now they're doing it with AI. If multiple leaders inside of an organization decide to stop hiring entry level folks and instead replace them with AI, they are banking on 5, 10 years from now that AI agent, I guess, that AI agent to be better than what they would have if they had a human there. That's what they're banking on. And I'm assuming you don't like that gap that they're creating between, getting things done and, these entry level folks. Because how do you recover from that? Or let me first make sure that I am correct. Like, this is the challenge that you see, that you would take these alleged leaders and maybe pull them aside and shake them and say, what are you doing? Because of this gap that they're on purpose creating, right?
Well, I think it goes beyond creating a gap.
Goes one
I
more.
think
Yes,
it's
yes,
about
yes.
what is your view of the future?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your view of the future? Like, I have kids, you have kids. Like, our view of the future presumably involves our kids having something to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
being able to generate an income. Having rewarding activities that they participate in day to day. Because what's the alternative? And we seem to have lost sight in that. We're taking the upside, and I say upside loosely because I don't really believe it's an upside, but it's an upside that's being sold. This idea that you can start eliminating positions because AI. And I'm open to the idea that you can, to some extent, eliminate positions because AI. AI does make you more productive. AI can help you to get more done. But it's a matter of, like, does that change happen organically because AI has actually changed other things about your business? Or does it happen because someone has got very excited about what AI can or cannot do, And I think those two things are very, very different, planning for a future that doesn't exist yet and might not exist because that's like the trendy thing to do because that's how you get rewarded in the boardroom nowadays. It's so short-sighted and it's so missing the point as to what leadership is. I said to you when we were chatting about this earlier, society is a team sport, right?
Mhm.
Like it only works if people are on board with the idea of what we're trying to achieve. And I realise that we aren't all pointed in exactly the same direction. There's a lot of polarisation in lots of things, from politics to everything else that goes on. But in general, the people who are part of our society have agreed with the kind of the bones of what society is about, right? Like we agree with having like the idea of like a fire department and hospitals and libraries
And
and things like that,
traffic
you know.
lights,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. So there's aspects of it that we've kind of signed up to. And what is it going to look like in the future? You know, how do you fund all of that stuff? Like all of these different things. Like we don't know any of this with the AI. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with AI. There's nothing to say that we shouldn't be using AI. Like I think the people who are saying we should just get rid of AI entirely or it's not useful, those people haven't got the right idea either, in my opinion. They are kind of missing the point a little. But the idea that you're calling someone a business leader, and they're like, oh, well, we're not going to hire any entry level employee. Are you insane? Like, are you like you understand fundamentally nothing about business? Like, what are you supposed to do? Am I supposed to hire the entry level people so that in 10 years' time you can hire the people I've trained? Like, am I now doing you a service? Like, you know,
Hmm.
like is that
Hmm.
how this is working? Like, I don't get it, and you know, it doesn't scale. Like, you know, you could be the innovative professional that's like, oh, yeah, it's me. I'm not going to be hiring any entry level people this year because AI, and that's fine when it's 22% of organisations and one of their business leaders that are doing this. But what happens when everyone's doing it? Like the
Hmm.
other point that was made in this article was that eliminating entry level roles forces companies to pay premiums for experienced talent. But this seems to miss the point that you only get the experienced talent if people have managed to be entry level. Like it doesn't make any sense, Thurman. I don't get it, and I
I
feel
want.
like I'm missing something.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm gonna try to maybe play devil's advocate for them. You know what I mean? Give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm the type of guy, Nick, that likes to give the benefit of the doubt, actually. And I believe this is why I'm not cut out to be a judge. Because I don't know that I can swing the gavel and really just, call it a day. I'm always trying to get the benefit of the doubt. So let me see if I can do this here. Maybe we're talking about two different things. Entry level roles versus entry level people. And an entry level role can be, something in a company that we do, but you don't need to have a ton of skills in order to do this thing. It's just it's a thing that needs to be done. But pretty much anybody can do it. Is what entry level feels like to me. That's the role. Then there's a person. A person, let's say a developer. A developer can become a really good developer without ever getting a job. And then now when they go to an organization, they can they can ask for beyond what the organization would consider entry level. Maybe like a junior developer supporting a team or supporting, one person, whatever. Like that would be what would look like the entry level in that area. But this person is beyond entry level. They surpass the role. You look at their portfolio and they're like, wow, you're pretty good. This is a mismatch. So the mismatch comes where you can become more than entry level as a person without taking on an entry level role at an organization. But I'm talking about developer. I don't know how many industries you can do this in. Let's say it is mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering, you're going to go to school for this, learn, and even after you go to school and learn, you're highly likely going to come out and do something that's entry level in mechanical engineering. I'm going to say that's the path. If you are now a company that has decided we're no longer hiring entry level mechanical engineers, we have a problem. And I see this as a problem. But what if we're talking about industries like software development? I guess that's probably a bad example because we're talking about AI right now. So something like software development where they're saying, okay, we have entry level roles and we have folks who have entry level skills. And we have decided that we're focusing on the roles, and we're just, whether you have entry level skills or not, that's not really what we're concerned with. We're saying these entry level roles, we're going to replace them with AI. We're no longer hiring for these. So that leaves these folks out in the cold to do what? Go develop their skills? Maybe that's where their idea of the future is, that the
But
way you
how?
develop your skills is no longer through sitting through a job and learning on the job type thing.
But
Maybe.
how? Well, I mean, that might be their idea. Like they might think that people just like sit there and like sit on the ground, cross their legs, and stick their hands up to their head like this, and suddenly it just clicks, and they're no longer
Mm-hmm.
entry level; they're now middle management. But that isn't how it works. Like, so
I'm
no matter
gonna.
how much like these business leaders want to dream up that that's what's going to happen. It's not what's going to happen. Like, it's like, I watched an interview with Sam Altman the other day telling us that we're in the middle of the singularity and how, AI is going to transform everything. And then you roll back a year and he was telling us, GPT-5 is like a team of PhDs working for you. I mean, it can be true that these tools are very useful. I use them every single day. You use them a
Absolutely.
lot as well now. I know you're using them more and more. And so
Mm-hmm.
they are very useful. But they're not as useful as the likes of Altman are saying, and he has a huge vested interest in portraying these things as far more useful than they actually are, in the same
Absolutely.
way that when you had like vacuum cleaner salesmen come to your door to door back in the day, they had a vested interest in making sure that you thought that their vacuum cleaner sucked harder than anything else on the market. But it might be true, it might not. But that didn't mean that their vacuum cleaner literally sucked. It just may have been average, not
Right.
best. So I just think that there's this like fantasy going on, and if you applied it to anything other than people in business, you would be calling someone to go do a welfare check on some of these people with what's coming out of their mouths. And because these are like titans of business, we're just like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And it doesn't make
Right.
sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. When I started work, I knew a lot of stuff, and at the same time I knew absolutely nothing. I was kind
Right.
of like how the AI starts out, frankly. And then what I
Yeah, that's normal.
did, which is different to what we've seen with a lot of AI products over time, is that I gained a lot of contextual, relevant information that helped me to move from a starting position to a better position. Now, I benefited from the fact that the people who were the business leaders in the organizations that I was in took the time and made the effort to see investing in me as something that was important. And in the end, like 3 years later, I moved on to a different organisation. So it didn't actually benefit that organisation a huge amount that investment was made. But someone else
Mm-hmm.
probably came along, and people come into different roles. And we all benefit from the fact that there are a lot of people out there that generally it's been seen as the role of, I'm the team leader, the line manager, the supervisor, whatever it is that you describe someone as, it's part of that job to care about developing people,
Right.
And so I would argue that these chief HR people who are answering this Gartner survey, they should probably spend less time answering this Gartner survey and asking why the heck there are business leaders within their organisation that know so little about how to lead. Because that would, to me, be an HR function to make sure those people are being coached to, if I was a chief HR officer and someone came to me, like some young, I want to succeed person, I've got a great idea. What I'm going to do with my team is we're going to take our budget for entry level employment next year. We're going to buy some AI agents. I'm not going to plan to bring in any entry level people for the next 5 years. My role would be to say, well, hang on a minute. Have you thought about the implications of what you're saying? And is that happening? Is that conversation happening, or is everyone just so excited about this
I think
that
it is.
you think it is? You think that conversation is
I do.
happening?
I do. I believe that in my heart that that is happening. I believe what we're talking about today is also happening. But I feel like what you just said, I believe that's the majority. I believe that's the norm. That is what is still happening. This is insane. If what we're talking about today was the majority of what's happening, I would find that extremely hard to believe. Um, because we are humans, and it is it is strange that a leader who has to think about the future would say something like what we're talking about today, right? But we know, baseline understanding, I believe, that what AI knows comes from us. Because I was thinking about, if you were talking to one of these leaders and you said, you, Nick, if you said to one of these leaders, hey, what are you thinking? What's your problem? Like, are you not considering the future? How are these folks going to learn? And they rebut with something like, well, there's ChatGPT, there's YouTube, like education is everywhere and it's free now. And it's like, that needs to be fed by humans. Like, there becomes a gap if the AI doesn't get the education that humans get. So humans still need to learn. We more than ever we need to learn. It's just that what AI has done, one of the positive things, it's like it's created this big pool of information that is easily accessible across the board. To where before, if you were 10 years ago, if you were a doctor who went to school and got an education and you were Googling, you'd be coming across somebody who might have created some information, put it on the internet, and then you may or may not come across it as a doctor who might be in your field. Where now more information is being gathered up by the AI as more people continue to pump information into the system. So you could be across the world and be a doctor who's like really good at this thing. And you start sharing that information, it makes all of us better because other doctors are picking it up. And while you may be great with that thing, they now incorporate it into their skills, and they're great with something that they have pushed back into the AI pool that you also have access to. So it's strange to me that somebody would think that you will no longer need the humans to come in entry level and keep building them up and let them keep learning what we learn that AI doesn't learn, that we have to tell AI for them to learn. So your fear, even though this is from zero research, I've done zero research to find out who's doing what. I think I could tell you that your fear right now is, nothing. You don't have to worry about it. That there's absolutely no way that the majority is what we're talking about today. I would find that extremely hard to believe that leadership throughout all these organizations are falling for the hype. Are some of them falling for the hype? Absolutely. That is normal. But all of them? I don't know, man. That would be, I'd be a little surprised at that. So for right now, I think we have nothing to worry about
I
in that
mean,
realm.
what what proportion have to get involved in this way for it to start having a negative impact, though? Because I think there's two components to it. It's the actual impact that the thing that's happening is having, right? And then there's the impact of the narrative around it. And we
Uh
keep
huh.
seeing this narrative, and this headline could say Gartner survey finds 22% of organisations have hired leaders who were ill suited to developing teams. That data could say exactly the same thing, in my opinion, because that's kind
I
of
bet
the
that's true.
reverse of what is going on there. And but we're focused in on this issue in this most negative of ways, and I'm so confused because no one's ever talked about Excel in this way, or Microsoft Lists, or whatever. Like I'm sure people have lost their jobs because Excel exists and we're not using abacuses. Like I'm positive that must be the case, right? But like, have people been like talking about that in this way? Like I just find it very confusing. And why is there this like almost like society destruction porn that is occurring in the business community? It's like everyone is so excited about this and wants to talk about it and focus on it. And I don't get it because these are tools. They work well for some things. They work poorly for other things. They are being developed. They are improving. The people who are doing those things are doing very good jobs. But is there any evidence to suggest that we should stop hiring people because these things are going to improve to a point where we don't need to? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I think that those leaders inside of those organizations might tell you something different. I have shown, I have seen that we don't need to hire entry level anymore because over the last 6 months, XYZ has happened. So their nearsighted thought process results in short-sighted thinking, um, or their nearsighted research results in short-sighted thinking because in the long run, it's just not sustainable. That's not a sustainable thing. At least from me and your point of view. Who maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're so wrong that avatars of ourselves are going to be doing work in the future. Who knows where we're even going right now? You already know me and my Terminator situation, but
But how does that work? I mean, at
I,
a fundamental at
that's
a
what I'm saying. I don't
fundamental
know.
level, like every company on Earth generates revenue from the fact that other people get paid. Like we're all very concerned about the fact that the AI industry is this like circle of money, right? And there's all
Mm-hmm.
this, but the whole society is a circle of money. Kroger sells food to people at the prices it wants to charge because the people have money from having a job. I mean, there's other circumstances as well, but that is the predominant way that people go into a Kroger store and pay for their weekly groceries, right? That is the predominant way that someone has a Netflix subscription. And so while it's all very well to be like, okay, we're going to eliminate 10,000 jobs, 50,000 jobs, 150,000 jobs, when you start talking about, well, AI is going to eliminate 50 million jobs or 100 million jobs, like you get to the point where the society as it functions right now simply cannot continue to function because
Right.
everyone's saving money so that or every organization's saving money so that they can I don't know pay the leadership more or pay the shareholders more or whatever the case may be. Like that's not the argument that I'm making, but there simply isn't any funds to come into their businesses. Like at some point, people stop spending money with Microsoft or OpenAI or Google or Anthropic because they simply don't have any customers anymore because none of their customers have jobs. So it just doesn't
Well,
work. It just doesn't work at scale.
here's the thing. Here's a challenge. The richest guy in the world right now, who is also very involved with things like AI and technology, is making statements like in X amount of years, no one is going to need money. Um, just because he's the richest guy in the world, it makes people listen.
If he gives up
Just
his money
because,
first, I mean, if he wants to
just
give up his
because,
money first, if he wants to take $1 trillion and put it in a pile and set light to it,
right?
and he wants to set the example and say, well, I don't need money, so no one else does, I'll listen to him. But when you're sitting
I
there
feel
on a
you.
pile of $1 trillion, like, what a stupid thing to say. No one will need money. Okay, well, why?
Right.
Why are you why are you collecting so much money if no one's going
What?
to need
But
it? What would be the point?
well, that's the thing. Because it's funny because he has that much money and notoriety and attention, people who are also leaders in organizations are looking to him for thought leadership. So if that guy says that, you can get away with making a statement like, hey, well, I don't even hire entry level anymore. And then when me and you have a discourse and you eventually get to the point where you say, well, society can't run. Businesses exist because people buy things from the business. Guess what I'm gonna come back with? Well, that won't matter in the future because we won't need any money. You know why? Because I'm parroting the thought process of not only that person, Mr. Richest in the world, but a bunch of other people who are also parroting what he's saying. That's how this
Mm,
stuff
mm,
works.
mm,
And
mm.
it's unfortunate because that is a real that can have a real effect, like no longer hiring entry level folks.
But the problem with
This
that, Therman, is there's
is a
only
thing.
two ways that our society doesn't need money plays out. And one of them, the likes of Elon, I don't think is going to like very much. And that is that we just create equality for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether you were previously rich or you were previously poor, we've moved into a new age now, and it doesn't matter anymore. Everyone,
Right.
everyone gets their needs met. No one needs to have a yacht. Like why would you have a yacht if money doesn't exist anymore? Like
Right.
the concept does, like, everyone gets to go on a yacht. We have shared yachts. They're run by robots. The AI navigates. That's the
There you go.
kind of thing that happens. I wouldn't go myself. I get terribly seasick. But if you want to go on a yacht,
Right.
Thurman, you'll be able to.
Uh, it depends. It
Or
depends on who I'm with.
we solidify a huge gap where there is the class of leaders and there's everyone else that just lives in poverty. And that's the worst case scenario. Like, what
Yes,
would
it
be
is.
the middle road? Like, why would some people have more than others? So, how would society function? Like, we we give the likes of Elon or Altman or whoever it might be, they're afforded a certain amount of grace because they are these people who have been very successful at what they've done and built these companies, and so they're afforded the opportunity to have an audience to say these things too that the likes of you and I are not, right? But,
Mm-hmm.
like, if they're so smart, get below the headline. Stop talking in these nonsense headlines and tell us the detail. Like, what is your plan? Like, Elon, if you think money isn't going to exist in 10 years' time, then explain what's going to happen. Start getting rid of yours, start distributing
Yeah.
it. Like, I don't. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. And I'm not even suggesting that should be the case. Like, I don't necessarily think a society without the concept of money is necessarily a good direction to go in. But I just think that
Yeah.
all of these sound bites need to evolve into concepts that can be tested in some way, not
Yes.
necessarily put into action, but tested intellectually. Because right now it just doesn't make any sense.
I'll tell you what, it's definitely the rise of foolishness on the internet. Now, before we go, I want to point out one more thing about um, Mr. Musk here. Recently, he was doing an interview with someone, and this person said that people didn't like him, and this seemed to make him say, "Well, you're wrong." And the reference that he used is the amount of people that follow him on his own platform. Um, I think just as much weight as people put into the things that he says on the one end that they're like all into, like, hey, society won't have money. And that means that trickles all the way down to me saying, I don't need to hire entry level. You should think about the thought process of a guy who, when is told that society doesn't like him, responds with, but I have 250 million followers on my app that I own. Uh, that should give you some insight into the thought process of who is doing the thought leadership that they're doing. Nothing wrong with some thought leadership when it comes to your domain and the things that you're well read up on, but thought leadership on things that involve, work in society amongst people, you should really give that some thought about who you're listening to about what when that's his statement. I thought that was very revealing. But again, him and the Altmans of the world and all these people who, like, to your point, fall into that category, you really have to slow down and think about who is saying what and why are they saying it? So there's that. Nick, if you don't got anything else, I'm gonna ask you to tell me about what you got coming up and where people can find you.
Well, I think across the different social platforms, I have maybe, I don't know, 15,000 people following
That
me.
means you're not
So,
liked.
maybe I'm
Nobody
not
likes you, Nick.
liked. Maybe that's my problem. That I'm just not liked. But I will say that if you do like me and you like me more than you like Mr. Musk, maybe, then please go and check out what I do on LinkedIn and YouTube, and maybe follow along. And I'm not trying to get to 250 million. I think that would be rather overwhelming. But if we can add 250, that would be fantastic. I'll say thank you to
Nice.
everyone for that. So that's all I'll say, Thurman. How about you? How are your numbers looking on the socials?
Well, definitely not 250 million. Uh, I don't know what. Less than 20,000. Let's say that. And it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Listen, you can find me on TikTok. I'm there every day. There's a point in this show. If you go back, you'll see that I said I'm on LinkedIn every day, and if you don't find me, I'm dead. I just want to say I'm well. I'm alive. You know what I'm saying? This is not, some AI situation. I'm very well alive. I just fell in love with TikTok because, that's where I get to show you all the things that I'm talking about. So if you are interested in some really good SharePoint tips that you can take away and use immediately, like the rest of my audience, then by all means, give me a follow over there on TikTok and you'll see what I'm talking about. And maybe you'll hear about the SharePoint bootcamp that I got coming up. Not maybe, you will hear about the SharePoint bootcamp that I got coming up. So stay tuned for that. Nick, it's been great. Really good discussion. Enjoyed it today. Hopefully the audience enjoyed it as well. I will see you back in another couple weeks here.
All right, see you, Thurman. Take care,
All
everyone.
right. All right.